Okay, there we go. Now, this session is all about, I suppose, understanding some of the benefits of safe system assessments, the process that safe system assessments sort of take within the life cycle of the infrastructure project and where they best fit in, and talking about some of the differences between safe system assessments and road safety audits. There's a couple of other things, though, that I do want to cover off here, and I've got a good bit of time allocated in this session for discussion about your safe system assessments that you're currently undertaking. So any questions you've got, and you can raise your hand and we can have a chat about it. I can give you the ability to unmute yourself, or you can type it in and I'll talk to it from the chat. Even happy to bring up different plans or something. We can go in and find your design or the like if you're interested. So that's one thing I do. I have allocated plenty of time for that discussion. And the second one is, I suppose alerting you to what some of the other jurisdictions are doing in this space in terms of things like registration, accreditation of safe system assessors, and what different requirements are, just so you're sort of broadly aware. I'm not going to spend long on that. Just I think it's good that you're aware of what's happening in other jurisdictions in Australia and New Zealand. Then the final thing we'll do is a little bit of looking at some different road stereotypes or sort of different road environments and street environments. And then with those, talking about what aligns highly with safe system principles. And the reason for that is to really, well, I suppose you're going to have done a safe system assessment on one particular road environment, but the process should be able to be followed in any road environment. So we want you to just get some thoughts on these other road environments. So yeah, that's what we're going to try and cover today. We may finish a little early, but that'll just give you time to finish off the last quizzes and finish off your safe system assessment or get started on your safe system assessment. And I'll show you at the end how you do that through Moodle and finish off the course. Now, I saw Brad's hand went up briefly, but it's gone down again. So I'll assume that was either an accident or just testing the system there, which is fine. But do feel free to put your hand up. Always happy to have that, give you the ability to unmute yourself and have a little bit of a chat about any of the topics or type them in. So I'll get started, but if you do have any questions about your assignment, your safe system assessment, please feel free at any point along the journey, either put the hand up or type it into the chat. Okay, we've got the chat going on the side here so I can see what's going on, and let's keep moving on. Okay, I'm going to start with this this graph, and this graph is the output of an evaluation of 35 safe system assessments on big projects, like massive projects. I think the smallest was like $100 million or something like that. So, and there were some really, really big ones in there. And that was sort of in, safe system assessments were fairly new. I think this was done in, probably about 2017, 18. Most of these assessments were done. And they were then handed over and evaluated, the assessments by Blair Turner, who some of you might know. And I'll talk you through this graph because I think it tells quite a story. And it really tells a story about why safe system assessments are a good thing and why a lot of governments are sort of mandating them as part of their infrastructure investments. So there's a little bit to work through here. Let's have a look at the title of this, first of all. Okay, this is a prediction on crashes that will occur in a 20-year period from the point of, I suppose, practical completion of the project. So not during construction phase at all, but project's finished, and then the road is operating for 20 years, and they've used a crash prediction model. So they used ANRAM, the Australian National Risk Assessment Model, which is very similar to OSRAP, but with a few other little tweaks, and then made some judgment calls around growth. You looked at the traffic modeling to see what was predicted. Okay, so on this side, we've got FSI crashes or KSI crashes, so fatal serious injury crashes or killed and seriously injured crashes. That's the, now, the first one here is no project. So this is where they said, yeah, the project that was reviewed, if that project does not go ahead, and that road essentially functions as it is, it'll be, a lot of these were sort of large duplication jobs and things like that. So the roads were very, I suppose, congested and the like. And so they just let it run in the model and the growth and everything like that and make some assumptions. They predicted across these 35 projects, and some of them, pretty decent lengths of road, big town bypasses, major outer suburban duplication jobs and those sort of things. There were going to be 7,908 serious injuries and 344 fatalities over a 20-year period on these stretches with no project. Then they got the designs that were handed over to the Safe System Assessor. So what we call the original designs. Now, a lot of these were reference designs or the like for the big contracts. So they, the majority of them, something like 30 or 32 of them, had been subject to a feasibility stage road safety audit. But these are the original designs, and they assessed that then in the prediction model and said that brings the death and serious injury, or the serious injury on these roads for the next 20 years down to 6,700, and the deaths down to 286. Then they looked at what the Safe System Assessment had recommended, and your suggestions or things for them to consider, the project team to consider. And now you're in the process of sort of undertaking the assessment and then coming up with ways to improve things even more. So the assessor sort of took those things, the ideas that the assessors had come up with, and said, in a sort of hypothetical world, if the project team was to take all of that advice on, what would that do? And that brought, so they sort of conjured up this new hypothetical in their mind, and that brought the deaths and the serious injuries down to 3,890 and 167 fatalities on these stretches. Then they looked at what was accepted, what was taken forward, and actually then put out to tender for more sort of design or further, probably tweaks, but the bulk of it was pretty much set in this final reference design. And what was, so that went up a bit to 5,298 serious injuries, 227 fatalities. Okay, so what does this tell us? Well, it tells me quite a story, and I'll walk you through that story, but you might have some insights yourself from this. The first thing this says to me, and I just say the difference between that and that, to me, says that the designs here, usually produced by the big design houses, the designs off the production line, are improving road safety. Okay, they make things safer. The next thing that this sort of tells me is that between here and here is sort of what could be done if we were willing to push some of these boundaries and take a lot of this safe system knowledge on. So it's a big sort of extra bit that we've got there. The difference between that And that there, to me, is, well, that's an interesting and complex one. That's often funding, politics, just people not liking this sort of treatment idea, being unsure of it, it being new, being maybe you're reluctant to innovate or be the first one to do such treatment in their area or the like. Lots of sort of reasons it got pulled back there. But the difference between this line and here, for me, I mean, that is your immediate benefit of a safe system assessment by just going through the process. That's pretty exciting, okay? That's saying, oh, why don't you consider this? And they've gone, yeah, okay, actually we can do that. And the evaluations are showing that a lot of those are bringing us some significant savings. Now, remember that these had been subject to a road safety audit. The road safety audits are often sort of trying to pick the issues that the design will cause, if that makes sense, that, that will create a see-through effect, or that will, the geometry of this is, is not quite, they're getting into these sorts of things, that the creation of risk. This is a bit more of the opportunity for further reduction in risk. Now, some auditors get into that space, but it's sort of this proactive pushing and can we do more? Can we do more? Sort of way of thinking of it, or can we do it differently with a safer outcome? So that's pretty exciting. I mean, that's immediate benefit. Next thing I sort of ponder, well, actually, this is one that I really, when I first saw this evaluation, I was like, what? Aren't we talking about zero? Like, we're all aspiring to zero, and we're saying, the safe system, zero death and serious injury. But this kind of shows you that there was a lot of, I suppose, real world to this evaluation, because it said that, well, okay, you've built this infrastructure and it's fantastic, and it's got all the continuous barrier systems, it's got these things slowing down at conflict points, acceleration lanes, and all these really good things, but there is still this residual of behavior and vehicles and energy that is not being accounted for. And you'll find that a lot of things in here are things like motorcyclists, probably high level offenders, so very high speed crashes, well, I suppose, I was going to say intentional acts, but that sort of evading the police style stuff. Really hard behaviors and activities out there on the network for us as infrastructure engineers or infrastructure designers and managers and the like to rectify with the infrastructure. So to a degree, those are areas that we have to do a few things. We have to utilize the other elements of the safe system to try to address this through enforcement, through vehicle changes and the like. And we also need to keep innovating with our infrastructure and seeing if there's things we can do with the infrastructure that reduce this. Now, they did plug into this model a sort of vehicle improvements, but it is even still sort of lasts as this residual, which is, it's concerning for our sort of Vision Zero aspirations. But that's where you'll see a lot of, I think, really refined road safety strategizing is around trying to get this addressed in one way or another. And it may be different to the way we've traditionally worked on road safety, or even that we're working on road safety at the cutting edge at the moment, because they're challenges that we don't have immediate solutions for. This one, I think this gap will be addressed through us having more people exposed to these new ideas, pushing community along to be more accepting of different treatments, getting our standards and guidelines updated to reflect best practice. There's a whole lot of things. People doing more of these sort of training courses and the like, more people getting on board and understanding this. So hopefully that gap will close there. And I think what you'll start to discover is as that gap closes, this one will come down as well, because our designers and those managing projects will get better. Our planning projects will get better at understanding how we can get the best outcomes. So sort of want to see all of this coming down. The Node project did take into account sort of the vehicle advances of the future, but as maybe policies change and things get accelerated in terms of safety feature adoption and policy changes, we might see this come down a little bit too, potentially. But that's what they predicted at that time. So yeah, there's a huge amount sort of in that one little graph, but I'll see if anybody has any comments or questions about that. I find it quite interesting. Well, if you do, either pop them in or as I say, feel free to pop your hand up and talk to it. Okay, so a few benefits of the safe system assessment process. And I think a lot of you who have done safe system assessments or had them done on your projects, or what you've gathered from what we've gone through so far, can probably see some of these already. But it's a great way of determining how well a project aligns with safe system principles. And that sounds obvious and easy, except for that's something that we have not really had in the past. And we've had kind of people's opinion on what's good and what's not. People with sort of these ideas that some particular treatment was safe system and other treatments were not. And, like people who thought, oh, well, safe system is just wire rope barrier and roundabouts. And you go, well, they just happen to be treatments that in a lot of situations have good alignment with safe system principles. It's not to say that that is the safe system, but it's just, that those principles play out quite well in a lot of scenarios. But this actually gives us something then to quantify, something to go forward with and give a report card on a project's alignment with safe system principles with some scores to it. I mean, that's exciting. Now there's bits of subjectivity to it, and there's other little things, but overall, that overarching idea that we're able to do that's pretty exciting. And it's really good method to compare design options from a safe system perspective, and feed that into your multi-criteria assessments and other decision-making points along the way of a project. The road safety audits are they're not designed to compare options. In fact, when I run the road safety audit course, I'm very clear with that to say that this is not you shouldn't do an audit and say, well, this is best, this is it. No, you're just picking the road safety issues with each of those design options, if you've got multiple options to audit. Whereas the safe system assessment methodology provides that clear way to say, here are 5 project options and here's how they rank by overall safe system alignment, but also for road users, particular road users. So that's really helpful. And that is being fed into different systems being run by different jurisdictions, into things like a movement and place assessment. So integrating safe system scoring into that, being, as I talked about in the multi-criteria assessment, so the traffic model comes through, the safe system assessment, often complemented with a star rating road star rating or the like. And it's very much, I think, being used now in New South Wales. Some of you will be involved in the planning of your major infrastructure projects are getting safe system assessments. Provides that information on design changes that will move the project closer to safe system objectives of eliminating the risk of fatality and serious injury. So, as I mentioned there, not just picking the things that the design will create, the risks the design will create, but also the risks that the design is not addressing. And that's, in a lot of circumstances, they're one and the same, but in some situations you find extra things. Good method to assist planners, designers, project managers to move the safe system from theory to practice. And again, the safe system, the majority of our profession now are aware of, heard of the safe system. They know it's just, well, some people just sort of talk about the elements or the pillars and they say, oh yeah, we address road safety through the roads, the vehicles, the speeds and the people. Now that's not the safe system. They're just sort of the elements, the levers we can use to pull. The safe system is, embedded in those principles that we talked about and the philosophy of humans making mistakes and the management of energy and those. Quite a bit of the industry now got their head around that, right? But it's all too airy-fairy, philosophical, minister talk, all of that sort of jazz. What do we do on the ground? And this is a great tool for it, as I think you're starting to find out. Taking that greyness and getting some clarity around things. And it's a sound basis for future planning of designs and road infrastructure. And encourages innovation a bit as well, I think, which is an area where I think we need to continue to actively push to be innovative, to be moving things forward. So I'll jump onto some process guidance, but I do keep, as I keep saying, feel free to type in to the chat there as we go. Okay, so we're not at all saying, since this safe system assessment came about, and we're not at all saying that road safety audits don't perform a very important function in our infrastructure projects in road safety assurance. We say safe system assessments do a slightly different job, and the way they're done and the way they're presented lend themselves to that concept, draft, early feasibility stage of projects. And when there's meat on the bone, road safety audits are better served. I mean, the safe system assessment process can be done at a detailed design stage. Like the process works. I just sort of warn you now that you're the least likely to get change to occur if you do that. You're not really dealing with options. Occasionally you'll get a few options, but you're dealing with, so you get a score and then a list of improvements. And also your improvements might be fundamental changes to the scope or your suggestions on that. They're just not going to be taken on. When there's 500 pages of design documentation done, the idea to change your intersection form is not a possibility. And you passed all those gates through your approval process anyway. But auditing is good there because it's not going to change the fundamental scope, but it'll pick those, very specific nuanced issues like, the flare rate of the barrier is greater than it should be, or the overlap of the barriers at this location is incorrect and could cause a vehicle to strike an end terminal that you don't want. Those sorts of things, which can get rectified and they will get rectified. Open to traffic and existing conditions, you might do another assessment down here just to feedback and as a comparison, but that's that's a maybe. So that's the sort of suggested way that it's rolled out. Now, the comment that often comes in is, why are we having to do this? Why another process? We do road safety audits, so that's going to cover off our road safety. Now, I've got here sort of this comparison, and yeah, I'll run through it, but I'll talk to it. The likelihood of crashes, they're both looked at they're looked at in both the audit and the assessment. The severity of crashes, really should be looked at in a road safety audit. It always should have been, because that was how we arrived at a risk rating for likelihood and severity. But there was a tendency in the auditing industry to be more focused on the likelihood. And I just use the classic example of your signalised intersection in an 80 km/h road environment or a 70 km/h road environment. The audits we were seeing of these at no point was mentioning the inherent energy associated with the vehicle that runs the red light. There was a lot of wonderful auditing around why people might run that red light, be it see-through effect, be it sightline issues to the signals, or maybe even other things like end of queue, the phasing, the line marking, signs, and blocking different, really great stuff, important stuff. But that idea that all of it slipped through and that we're having a crash, and what's the severity of that crash, was being ignored in road safety audits. And so this forces you into that as you're seeing going through the process. The safe system assessment does. But we are getting better on that. And I'll pop that in there, that the recent 2022 release of the Austra's Guide to Road Safety Part 6 has stepped this up. And there's some more elements in there that should push this to get better and better. And also, I reckon we could probably put sometimes in there as well, identifies issues that impact the exposure to crashes, maybe sometimes. Well, again, in the 2022, we've sort of highlighted the exposure fits in the likelihood of crashes in that risk matrix, but it's not as looked at. But again, safe system assessments do really look at that. They both provide recommendations and improve road safety outcomes and consider all road users. So the focus on fatal and serious injury crashes only in that safe system assessment, whereas audits can, and it can be very beneficial sometimes, they'll have that extra focus of other injury, minor, bingles, and the like. So that's just, something to note. When we go to that wider scheme of looking at the other elements of the system, the vehicles, the people, and things like maintenance and the like, audits, not really, or sometimes, whereas those qualitative questions at the end of a full safe system assessment really take you through a lot of this thinking and help you and give you the ability to make comment around it, put some ideas on the table around post-crash care as well. And then, fundamental recommendations to redesign or alter the project scope. Well, the audit doesn't make those fundamental redesign recommendations or suggestions. Safe system assessment does. Of course, in New South Wales, as you are, you don't even make recommendations in road safety audits. That would be some sort of supplementary memo or the like. So, the safe system assessment has that facility for recommendations or ideas for consideration from the assessment team. And if you are worried about the use of that word recommendation or those sorts of things, you can guide your assessors for your project and say, we want these labelled as ideas for consideration or something like that. That's okay. And as I talked about before, I think the innovation is really interesting to analyse how road safety audits have influenced innovation in road safety infrastructure space. And I would say road safety audits, for all the wonderful good they've done, they have hampered innovation in road safety. Due to the fact that the purpose of, like, a road safety auditor's task is to identify risks that the new infrastructure is going to create. So the nature of that assessment is to find risk, not to quantify or justify benefit. So when we see things like raised intersections, signalized, high volume roads, the road safety audits coming back are focused on the things like potential rear end crashes, vehicle rollover potential, pedestrians being confused, and these sorts of things. They're all worth us analyzing, understanding, doing some, truckability analysis, modeling, worth us making sure we've sort of thought these through. But at no point in the audits are we seeing the massive, massive reduction in energy and risk and frankly, the huge road safety benefits we get from these. Now, so we really get focused on the small potential increases in risk. Mind you, all of those things aren't really playing out in much, with all these deployments of raised intersections on large arterials. We're not seeing trucks roll over. We're not seeing any increase in rear end crashes. But nonetheless, that's the auditor's concern. And they're kind of doing exactly what their job is to identify those sort of things. But it really starts to stifle innovation when the independent safety person is only commenting on the potential bad aspects of this, not the good. But the safe system assessment, because of the nature of showing that benefit, it becomes a really useful tool for that road safety innovation. And you take it like something like, I think topical one for New South Wales is barrier systems in medians and the like. And again, you're quantifying the benefits you can get from a barrier system in a narrow median and narrow flushed median. And yes, there are going to be some risks, but if you just do a road safety audit, it'll just come back with all those risks, not that benefit. So you're not able to really weigh that up, if that makes sense. So hopefully you're understanding that. The versatility of a safe system assessment as well is quite attractive, and you can really undertake holistic safe system assessments on remote communities or whole cities, mine sites, because you can analyze not just the infrastructure, but the vehicle fleets that are used, the people, and the road safety behaviours, post-crash care availability, and those sorts of things. So it's quite a scalable method. Okay, let's go through the process. Well, this is traditionally how it sort of plays out. Some sort of determination of what depth of assessment is going to be undertaken. Is this the full one where there will be some looking into the vehicles and people and those sort of things, or is it a rapid one? And I'll talk to you about the specific differences. Now, that's something that's sort of been developed originally by the Victorians, and then the South Australians have taken it on, and the New Zealanders are now doing that. And so it's generally our Queenslanders doing it, but they've called them full and light. So it's kind of saying there's two different ones there. I'll take you the differences between those shortly. But then the safe system assessment team is selected, and that'll be the project. We'll get a team together. Usually they're getting sort of external consultants to do it, or finding another team within the region who are fairly much independent from the project that know how to do these. And then there's some sort of exchange of information, explaining the designs, And also within that, getting a bit of context for the project, the objectives. That helps with putting those ideas for consideration down on the table, because you know the context of the project, what's trying to be achieved, and so you're not, suggesting that the Princess Highway goes to 30 kilometres an hour and gets, whatever traffic calming, because the objectives of the project aren't in that aligned with that. Then the site's inspected by the Safe System Assessment team, and you do that to look at obviously the existing operations of it, imagine that being built, the tie-ins, how it's all going to function. You complete the Safe System Assessment matrix for the existing conditions. Then for any and all and every design option you're given, consider the other elements of the safe system if you're, so they're those qualitative questions, if this is a full safe system assessment. Then you come up with treatment ideas that will make each of the designs better. Do your reporting using one of the standard templates, which you now have a copy of. Then it's handed over to the client or the receiver of that, and they sort of make their own responses. There's those column for responses, whether they're going to take that on or they can't do it for one reason or other, or they'll do something else. And they make those changes, and then they incorporate them into the treatment. Now, at this point here, people will often go back here and ask for another scoring. I say, yep, we're going to take this on, not this one, and we can do this instead and this. Can you give us a new score of our adopted design? I like that practice because it gives you this nice, clear story of, say, this is score, and obviously the higher the bar, the worse it is. You've got that as your original existing conditions, and maybe a design got you to there, or design option 4 got you to there, and after you've done the safe system assessment, it went down to there. And you're showing, hey, look, we were improving things anyway, but we've improved things even more now after we've gone through this process. So Alison asked a great question there around, is it important for the Safe System Assessment team to be independent from the project they are looking at? So there's no specific clarity around that in the Austroads guide. And we do like the idea of designers and others sort of thinking through projects, utilising the Safe System Assessment matrix of their own project to get an idea of like. The industry practice now, though, is for it to be an independent team to undertake the Safe System Assessment, but working a bit closer with the design team and the project manager and the client in terms of these, really understanding that context of the project and talking through recommendations or areas for consideration with them and trying to help them through that. So I would say that it's the practice of industry now is for independence, but it doesn't actually say that anyway. Well, some of the guidelines, like the Victorian guidelines, say that the leader of the Safe System Assessment team must be completely independent of the project. It doesn't say that it can't be the team can't have some of the project team within the assessment team. The South Australian guidance says the same. Most of the time we find that just plays itself out naturally because the project teams, like your Transport for New South Wales or your Department of Transport or TMR or the like, they just don't have the resources and the time to undertake these assessments. So they're outsourcing them anyway. So it kind of links together. Yeah, I hope that clarifies that. Yeah, so that's the general process. It's very similar to the road safety audit process. That was kind of intentional in terms of something that could slot in and that project teams were very comfortable with, that sort of idea and that process. Some jurisdictions are now moving to say that, or change their policies to say that the early stages of a project, that safe system assessment is done, and it voids the need for a road safety audit at that same stage. So they, for your $50 million, $100 million project, the feasibility stage road safety audit, or that early stage road safety audit, isn't undertaken, and it's replaced by a safe system assessment. Now, I think that's very much New Zealanders, Victorians, South Australians in that space. I think that's good, because I hate the idea of just red tape on projects where it's not adding considerable value. And I think the overlap between the audit and the safe system assessment, well, certainly to me, the safe system assessment will capture everything the audit will capture, plus more, and put it in a more consumable format. So why would we double up then? Why would we add more red tape to that project development process, project planning and development process? So I like that. Yeah, again, it's about navigating through your systems and the like. Okay. I'll show you a few. Sorry, I'll just read Brad's comment here. Touched on this last week. Can you comment on who should undertake safety assessment? Does Australia say? What the other states say? Yep. So great question, and links perfectly with what I'm about to show you from the Victorians and who, yeah. I mainly focus on the Victorians and South Australians here, but I will talk to what the Queenslanders are doing. So everybody around you, and then the New Zealanders. And hang on, we've got a raised hand here, so I'm going to see if Mike wants to say hi. Hopefully, Mike, you can unmute yourself now if you did want to talk, or maybe you accidentally pressed that. Hopefully, the unmute function, yes.
Sorry, Ken, it was a mistake.
Hello.
Hello, sorry, it was a mistake.
Ah, that's all right. It was lovely to hear from you anyway.
My apologies, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll send you back. But look, that was a good example of how easy it is to say hello if you want to talk through a question or analyze something. Okay, so let's have a look. The Victorians still using the VicRoads website, even though they've moved to a Department of Transport mode, but the VicRoads is still there. So they've got their safe system engineering page, and they've got their guidelines on there, and those templates that I gave you in your memory stick and in Moodle and the like. But also in here, they have this register of recommended safe system assessors. Now, words chosen very carefully. They're recommended safe system assessors. They didn't want to go with a accredited or anything like that. Just saying that here's some recommended people that we have reviewed, and they've got this growing the list bit. Like, how do you get on this list? Well, flag that you are interested with the relevant team, but you complete this course, and you're just about to complete this course, the principles and assessments component, which you've been through. Then do a safe system assessment, and then submit that assessment in, and this group then actually reviews it. So it's a bit of a resource constraint for them. They actually have to go through and then if they think it's okay, you'll go to the list. They might provide you with feedback and ask you to resubmit. And then they just publish a PDF list every so often. They sort of update it and put it back up there. It just comes in like that. And contact details of the Register of Recommended Safe System Assessors. Now, there's nothing to say that people from New South Wales can't get on this register if you want. I'm not aware of any plans from New South Wales to go down this track. There is a current Austroads project sort of dealing with road safety auditor accreditation and registration and the like, and trying to harmonise that across the states and territories, which is going to be, it's a challenging thing to do for a whole lot of reasons. But yeah, you could, if you wanted to, get onto this. Yeah, so you'd have to then go and do a safe system assessment, and they want to see a little bit more than this sort of mock one that we're doing. I mean, mock one's a good start, but they'd want to actually see you have some sort of workshop with the project team to understand the context and really flesh out that context and understanding of the project. Whereas we've sort of glossed over that in order to get into the matrix and really show that you understand that bit of it. And also some, general thinking around those qualitative questions. So the South Australian government has a list of pre-qualified safe system assessors. That one is actually a lot easier to get onto if you want to get onto a register, because they simply say if you successfully complete this course, you can go onto their register. So you literally just put the safe system assessment certificate in and they will update and add you to that list. So they sort of trust our assessment of your safe system assessments that you're going to be putting in, and the quizzes that you've done and those sort of things. The TMR doesn't have anything at this stage. They just thinking about whether or not they add it to their list of auditors and put a tick next to ones that can do safe system assessments. They're trying to work out what they base that on. Will that be that they've just successfully completed this course? Or is it that they have to submit a safe system assessment or the like? And the New Zealanders, as they kind of do with road safety auditing, simply say, well, each time you procure a safe system assessment as a project manager or designer or the like, you just need assurance that whoever you're procuring to do that, whoever you're engaging to do that work is qualified. We'll let you work that out. So it's a different approach. I think saves on a whole lot of administration challenges, probably leaves the potential for a little bit of a few issues. But yeah, so in New South Wales, though, at the moment, there's really nothing ironclad in design. I mean, I think you'd have a responsibility to ensure that whoever you're engaging has at least, I suppose, successfully completed this course or something like this, has that good understanding. Maybe it's probably, I think, maybe a bit much for having a good solid history of safe system assessing, because it's a bit new for that. Yeah, that's sort of where we sit at the moment. So, Brad, I hope that sort of explains it. It's not particularly clear in New South Wales. You could, I suppose, provide that feedback to, I was going to say the Centre for Road Safety. I don't even know what they are now. Somebody might know. Prize for the person who can tell me what on earth that department has now become. Let's see if Brad wants to have a chat about that. Hopefully you can unmute yourself there, Brad. You there? You've unmuted yourself. I can't hear you though. Oh no, maybe your microphone's not working. Can't hear you, Brad, sorry. I'm trying to talk, it's not coming through. All right. Oh, yep.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Gotcha. Hello.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Now the question was asked, like, we have a lot of trouble, I think, in New South Wales in particular for road safety auditors in terms of you're trying to increase the profession and the quality of audits. And I see if this thing's not worked out, I know we haven't fully embraced these in New South Wales yet. We're a little bit behind, but if we don't do the same thing, we'll be in the same mess of road safety audits, to be honest. And you can do these courses, and this has been a really good course, Ken, but unless you get the right people doing the course, then the course is giving you a procedure on how to do something. It's not filling in the gaps of all the years of experience I think you need to be able to identify these things when you're actually doing assessments. And it's much like road safety auditing too, why you need to be a certain auditor, why you need that 5 to 7 years experience in certain fields. You get you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, very much. Well, I like the part of the new Austroads guide where it talks about the pathways for development of road safety auditors, and clearly sort of says that, doing a course ain't going to make you a good auditor. I mean, it's the experience, the knowledge, the attitude, and in that full context of it, plus understanding the process and training and things like that. But you're right, you're spot on. It's the same with this safe system assessment, and we have the opportunity to get it in its infancy and sort of rectify this. And we did put a little paper to Austroads a while back to say, this has got a bit of traction around Australia. Could we learn from the mistakes, things that have emerged from road safety auditing and trying to rectify these in an early manner? I suppose the challenge a little bit, and it's the same with auditing as well, is that we don't want like 5 people in New South Wales, only 5 people in New South Wales that can do safe system assessments and do them well, because we just won't. They won't be used because it'll be too expensive and too time consuming to get one done. So you've got to build the resource pool of these so they're reasonably easy to procure and they're not a major cost, and but you need them to be of a high enough quality. So yeah, you're right. How do we get the right people to be in there and doing it? And how do we, for those who aren't up at that level yet, how do we as quickly as we can bring them up to that level? Now, I think you'll know very well, Brad, to get up to that is years of experience in traffic engineering, road design, and understanding broadly across projects and everything like that. So it is a bit of a challenge. I think I find it a funny example, which is Western Australia in road safety auditing. And they went down this path of a very rigorous road safety audit. So you've got the course, which is highly intense. It's an online thing. I wouldn't call it a good course, but I would call it intense and long. Like, I did it and it took me like 28 hours or something online, and pre-recorded bits and pieces and one of those real, anyway, got through that, right? But then you've got to do, you've got these continuing professional development requirements of the courses that they specify, which is a crash investigation style course and this and that. And this is all good. And it makes these really rounded. Oh, sorry, you get also, if you're a new auditor, you get assigned a mentor, and then you've got to work with your mentor for a year. And so what ends up through this quite intense process is that they have a small pool of really committed, like, career road safety audits. That's what they do. And so you've got this, it's really great. But the thing was that I'd sort of gone through their process, not because I do any work in Western Australia, I think the East Coast, but I wanted to, understand the process and be involved in it and check it out and see what we could learn over the East here from that. And so I got onto their register, as a senior auditor or whatever. And I'd be getting calls to go over to Perth to do a road safety audit of like a new splitter island or something like that. Like, my God, this has gone insane. And it was just due to supply and demand. So I don't want to find ourselves in there. But how do we sort of, I suppose, bring the pendulum back a bit from just sort of low quality assessors and auditors out there just, yeah, because they've done a course and ticked a box. Yeah, so I'm giving you great answers there, Brad, but I'm agreeing with you that it's a challenge. But maybe one to float out to Joseph Lee or Melvin or somebody and just flag that, hey, you know, if you think this process is good and course is good, you say thought it was all good and really liked it, but what are we going to do around, you know, building this industry? Okay. Thank you for putting your hand up there and chatting, Brad. Feel free others to jump in there. Yeah, so we're just looking there at the South Australian list. Yeah, so I suppose the Victorian one's got a little bit more because somebody's reviewed a full safe system assessment of theirs. Now, Queensland's got a policy requirement. They've got a road safety policy. This is PMR, Queensland Government. And within that, I don't have a snip of it, it requires a safe system assessment on all infrastructure projects. That's it. Like all infrastructure projects. I'm like, surely that doesn't mean that. Like, would it sort of refresh your line marking and do a safe system assessment or something like that? But in practice, and nobody's shown me exactly where it is, they are doing it for the larger projects, which I think is sensible. Just for assurance of value out of this compared to cost of doing it. Mind you, I don't think safe system assessments cost a huge amount. I mean, they're about the same as a road safety audit usually. So it gives you an indication. Anyway, I think that's interesting. The Victorians have gone with your sort of dollar-based way of deciding what needs to be done. So under $2 million, a rapid assessment can be done. So that lesser one, which on the next slide, I'll show you the difference. If it's determined that it's required. Now, you might say that, well, no safe system assessments required for this project because it's, you know, shoulder sealing for 5 kilometers and it's, you know, it's all the same. And, you know, we've done a light look at that and yeah, we don't think that it adds value or there's no scope to change anything. So that's, what's the point? Fair enough. 2 million to 5 million is a full safe system assessment for any complex project or projects with significant risk of FSI crashes, which usually basically anything high-ish speed or anything innovative, but rapid safe system assessments are okay for the lower risk or smaller projects or repeat assessments. But the above 5 million, I just say full safe system assessment for all projects. And that's their requirement. A rapid only if it's a repeat. So when I say repeat assessment, you know, when we went through that flow of an infrastructure project and came back and said, oh, okay, and then you've done that, they've made some alterations to the design and they're going back, that's sort of the rapid. You don't need to go through that full loop again. And the rapid or full or light, as the Queenslanders would call it. So the full safe system assessment has that commencement meeting style discussion, bit of a workshop, good understanding of the project background and context, get out on site, look at all of that, assess the existing conditions and all the options through the matrix, look at all those other elements, pillars of the safe system, design changes, so recommendations or things to be considered, the full reporting, and so then the project team, you know, take all of that on board and rescore if necessary, and The rapid one, well, I suppose it's easy just to show, I think, things that are not necessarily required. So the workshop usually is not done. It's a little less than on that. Site inspections, I sort of half cross it out because we still do a lot of site inspections for rapids because we still believe that, but it's not specifically required. It could be sort of desktop design review and some street view looking. You're not getting the full context of it, but you're able to generally talk about things. But I would say more often than not, well, significantly more often than not, we still do a site inspection for a rapid system assessment. Other considerations, other pillars, that's out. So you're really just doing the matrix, just spitting out the infrastructure scores for all the options. So it's a lighter reporting. So it's not full report. It's just it's a lighter report. But that's probably about the only differences. So maybe, I don't know, 75% of the effort, maybe a little less for the rapid. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. We will have a stretch, fill up water break. But I also type into the chat if you did want me to cover off any other topics. We'll spend half an hour after this just jumping through some road environments, and you can pop a few ideas down on what could align higher with safe system principles. We're not going to spend a huge amount of time on that because I think this group's really done very well in proving that they've got some good understanding of how this all fits together. And I don't need to spend a huge amount of time on that. And then I'll just close it out by showing you through Moodle how you get your certificates and the like, which I think, again, you're already done a fair bit of that. So let's break now for 5 minutes. So yeah, have a stretch, back in 5 minutes. Okay. Let's get back into it. So I mentioned that you are doing a safe system assessment, a mock safe system assessment on one particular road environment, road stereotype, or one type of intersection. But the safe system assessment process should be able to be followed in any of these that you can see on screen, or anything that interfaces with a road related area. So I thought we'd just cover these ones off sort of briefly on really what features are we aware of at the moment that align highly with safe system principles. So you can put some things on the table for their consideration that would have higher alignment with safe system principles. Now, for a few of these, I'll do the bit where you type a few things in as some ideas. We'll do it for this one and then maybe one of the other ones as well. But here we go. We've got a residential street, obviously, default 50km/h speed limit. Cars parked down the end there. You can see a stop sign accessing onto a sort of 60km/h collector road. So what could we alter here in this road environment to align better with safe system principles, do you think? Pop any ideas you have in the chat. We'll give it a second, we'll see what comes in. All right. So, seen some good answers coming in there. Immediately, people looking to address speed through these areas. So Brad said, yeah, speed. Jamie's onto sort of local area, traffic management or calming, traffic calming. And yeah, certainly vehicle speeds through these areas we are trying to pull down, and the utilisation of existing known local area traffic management features is great. Speed humps, raised intersections, one-way slow points, all of these things are good because we really do recognise these are not through areas and we can be blanketing the speeds down. Now, these are classic examples of areas where you don't particularly have crash clusters. You'll have whole areas where they're sort of just randomly, the lightning has struck in random spots. So that blanket sort of looking to bring speeds down through these areas, and they're not providing that movement function. So this is good. Potentially, as you have specific spots for crossings, refuges, as there's desire lines and the like, they're good. So the speed reduction and traffic calming is going to reduce the likelihood and severity of the crash. The crossing is usually a likelihood factor, a refuge and the like. If it's combined to be raised, it then reduces the likelihood and severity. Nobody quite mentioned the access there and getting whether that could be closed or not. And that would be our exposure one, wouldn't it? You're reducing the vehicles through and less exposure to crashes. So there are always things to look at. Yes, you've got to think holistically, planning how that impacts on a whole lot of things, but the principles and ideas are good. So then when we get into these environments, quick prize for the person who can tell me where that is. Just want to type it in. See if anybody tells me as I talk about it. John is on it, Bondi Junction. It is Bondi Junction. In fact, it's even written up there if you got. It's oh yeah, John. There you go, John. You want a prize for being able to read there? Well done. Yeah, so this is an interesting one, sort of the entry into the big Westfield there, but also the train station. You know, real active traffic, foot traffic generator, and a lot of foot traffic movement. And then we've got the area, and at the time, still sort of operating at that. I think it was default 50 at the time. I think it got dropped to 40 as one of the pedestrian areas. But still, even 40, we're talking about pretty high speed and no traffic calming there. So we really want in these environments, once you're at that, the vehicles are sort of the odd one out and are so slow through these areas, almost to the point of being able to make it shared zone where pedestrians have priority and really slowing vehicles down. So that just that simple, you know, you can't mix higher speed vehicles with pedestrians. Unfortunately, I think there was at least 2 fatalities in this stretch and some serious injuries as well for pedestrians. So you can, you know, it's obvious that we can't be operating these without some of these features. Could you close the road would be a great question. Fortunately, buses tend to use this quite a bit. And that also presented some challenges with raised platforms and the like. But I think, you know, principles of reducing speed dramatically are good. People did often, or there was lots of discussion about that, you know, adding pedestrian fencing here and corralling to particular crossing points. And you just lose a whole lot of place value by doing that. And a lot of pedestrians will inevitably walk on the wrong side of those on the road and the like. So these environments are just not conducive to that pedestrian fencing type arrangement. Another Sydney example here. Well, let's see what the group thinks on something like this, which has that high, I suppose it's got a traffic function, pedestrian function, cyclist function, public transport bus function. You know, when you're moving to a place, it's the everything road, mixed use arterial. What do we think on these sorts of facilities in terms of reducing exposure, likelihood, severity, and getting a better alignment with safe system principles? Not too many ideas in, that's okay. I think you sort of probably got your head around most of this by now, but I'll just run through a few more of these. We are really looking to, I suppose, disrupt the straight, not necessarily disrupt it from the straight, but that straight and ability to put the foot down. There's nothing, I suppose, slowing traffic from doing that. And we do want to try to dampen that ability to just, you know, to really drive this through fast. And that can be done in a variety of ways, but probably utilizing the intersections and crossing points for raised areas is a very good one. That does a good job. Having the bus lanes probably provides you an advantage there in the ability to try to design something where the buses might have a freer run through. There'd be a bit of design thinking around that, but the principles would be something to slow vehicles from their straight, fast run through these areas. And the other sort of options and things to think about, you know, separated bike facilities, if you can fit them in, obviously they're altering either the likelihood or the exposure to crashes. Time-based speed management, Speed limits, time-based, is another good one for reducing the likelihood and sometimes severity of crashes. Dwell on red or rest on red style treatments, again, worth looking at for reducing the likelihood of crashes. So that's basically where you get your lights to dwell or rest on red during the sort of Friday night, Saturday night, drinking, partying times, where we know we have a high number of intoxicated pedestrians and activity and the like, and it just means that vehicles are not getting a sort of free continuous run through. They're there to slow at these different points, and then it'll drop to a green and then straight back to a red, maybe let a few through, but it most of the time is making it very slow and hard to go through there. Now, that works really well in some areas and some townships. In these sorts of environments, the traffic operations people lose their mind at the idea. I think that's an indication they're very not in a sort of safe system mentality, just due to the, you run a Sidra on it and it doesn't work that well. But the point is that at that time of day, a through movement through a lot of these roads should not be the priority, and keeping vehicles slow and protecting the vulnerable road users who, yes, are intoxicated and doing all sorts of crazy things that we don't condone or the like, but that's happening and we've got to protect. So those are interesting ideas to try to reduce the likelihood of crashes. Refuge points and the like can break up that and reduce the likelihood of crashes, but I think still speeds in these areas down, as we looked at in some of those sort of artistic graphic designs type ones in earlier sessions. Our low volume rural roads are going to be one of the biggest challenges we've got, I think. I think that everybody can get on board with a vision of a more livable, walkable, these sorts of areas. You know, it'll be a little bit hard, but people are okay with slower through these areas at different points, and you know, more people walking, more people cycling, and you know, speed. I think people can generally get on board with that because you've got that livability aspect, you've got the active transport, all those hooks that we can get into. These environments are just so challenging because they are high speed at the moment, you know, 100 kilometers an hour, probably operating speeds higher than that sometimes. There's a lot of it out there at, you know, this standard or lesser than this, and we don't have the dollars to deploy wide-scale infrastructure treatments that are complementary to that high speed and make it high speed and highly aligned with safe system principles, being central barriers, outer barriers, roundabouts at major intersections, acceleration lanes in other intersections and the like. We just cannot afford to do this on these low volume roads. So what do we do? Well, in the end, we will have to start managing speeds down on these, and it will be very unpopular, and people are not in the mood for it, and you know, the politics comes out on that. But we just, for the next 30 years, cannot just let these roads run at 100, 105, 110 operating speeds, because the mistakes that are made and the energies involved are just staggeringly high, hitting trees, hitting other vehicles coming the other way, hitting culverts, and crashes at these sort of sporadic intersections. I think that it'll be a huge challenge. And even if we do bring speeds down, if we manage to magically get the 80 kilometre per hour, maybe, or, you know, if we've got what Sweden sort of got, which was a default 70 kilometre per hour, and then they raised the speed of the major roads and let everything else like this and lower standard be operating at 70. I think, you know, even with that, we have the challenges of forcing at operating speeds, still the very high energy associated with leaving the road at those speeds. So yeah, it's going to be a huge challenge. Brad's point in there is a really good one around the vehicles. We are going to have to lean heavily on the vehicles in these environments. I think it'll be an interesting strategic play out on how these are managed into the future. But if you're doing a safe system assessment on these, really, I don't think there's any option but to be talking about ways to reduce the speed. Yes, you're going to do a whole lot of features that reduce the likelihood of crashes if you possibly can. Audio tactile center line, edge line, sealed shoulders, good delineation, all of the usual run-of-the-mill stuff we do in road safety in these environments, but small deployment of barrier systems at the highest risk points, but really the operating speeds are just so far beyond what we can tolerate that it just does not gel with our safe system. I think these are going to be our biggest challenge going forward, because of they're not high volume, but there's so much of it out there and it's so spread. But yeah, the vehicles will really help. I think there's potential to look to a dusk nighttime style speed limit reduction to start with, and then like very big deployment of mobile point-to-point speed cameras for all vehicles, not just heavy vehicles, which then gives you the ability to start to blanket, the low volume network, or at least have a perception that you could be actually enforced on these. But we'll see what plays out. When you get higher volume, and this doesn't look higher volume in this photo, but you don't want to take your photo when there's actually vehicles on the road. These are the ones where we do, there's the genuine need to keep high speed because of the higher volume and the freight movement and the vehicle movements. And these are the ones where we should be investing the infrastructure funds to keep the high speed. And that really does end with central barrier systems, outer barrier systems. Yeah, it's got some formation work to do and there's some cost in it, but that's where we want to keep our speeds high for the movement of goods and people. And then within those, if you're utilizing that central barrier system and you can get roundabouts, I like compact roundabouts, as you've been seeing, because I don't like spending money. If I don't believe it's giving me great value. I think the compact roundabout does almost as good a job as a full roundabout at about under half the cost. So anyway, but it provides a good opportunity. Then if you've got that, you can collect a few access points and a few other things and have a nice U-turn facility. So they've got to go that away and U-turn. And that's, removing the cross traffic crash. It's simplifying a lot of that. And it's providing a safe turnaround spot, but also addressing the intersection. So at a theoretical level, that plays out quite nicely. It's good to often strategically plan out a route over a long period of time and start to think about these and which features you put in at what times to roll things out in the most efficient manner, and as I think many of you are doing. I'll jump through these last ones fairly quickly. Higher volume outer arterial network. Again, this is as if recognised as traffic priority routes, we're immediately then understanding that the things like bike lanes would have to be a separated bike facility, with raised features for them to cross. You cannot be mixing higher speed traffic with bikes like this. They have to have their own separated facility. The physics of it just doesn't work. Actively trying to provide underpasses, overpasses for pedestrians. And New South Wales does these actually pretty well, better than a lot of jurisdictions for some of their urban, some of your urban arterial network. But then still your large intersections, you'd be expecting speed management through there with raised platforms or the like, just to bring speeds down at those significant conflict points where we know you're going to get a concentration of death and serious injury. Motorways, freeways run really well aligned with safe system principles from the perspective of single direction travel, so full separated carriageways, on ramps, off ramps, so the speed differentials are good. No hazards, fixed hazards. I mean, the barriers themselves, and they're rigid barriers, which are generally appropriate in a lot of these locations for one reason or another, but do have a little bit more energy going to the occupant of the vehicles. But really where we see these roads start to break down in terms of their alignment with safe system principles is as they break down in terms of traffic flow there. We see when a road, motorway is free flowing, it actually performs extremely safely for the number of vehicles it's got there. When it's absolutely stuffed, so vehicles are hardly moving, it performs very safely as well. Get a lot of minor fender benders and things like that, but generally very safe because there's not enough speed and energy to cause injury. It's as the freeway starts to break down the traffic flow, we see the speeds and the crashes, and that's our time to start to try to manage the freeway. And so it's managed motorways are really the go, and that's where you've got lane management, speed management, ramp metering, so signals on the ramps, and you're really starting to control that. The other thing we do see is a surprising amount of pedestrian trauma on these on motorways, and that's really more broken down vehicles, people getting out of taxis at all hours of the morning to who knows what, throw up or go to the toilet or whatever they're doing in these hours, and then we see the trauma resulting. So again, you manage motorway and detection of these incidents is the ability. So if you're doing a safe system assessment on these, you actually you'll find yourself get quite involved in thinking about some of the systems in place in monitoring and in how they will undertake event management in terms of incident management and those sorts of things. And major rural highways, well, we know the sort of Pacific Highway and the Hume and those sort of things are really going to be full containment of barrier systems pretty much until all the vehicles have sort of lane detection and the like and are not leaving their lanes. Even some of them may still do that. The intersections, as we talked about, these grade separated obviously is the preference. Grade separated with roundabouts at the interchange of the grade separation. I mean, we know that if you grade separate, you create an off ramp and the like. Again, it's fairly simplistic, but you want to put roundabouts there as a general rule. Otherwise, you've often still got a high-speed road through there and high-speed intersection. Lower volume high-speed intersections, but so that's the ideal. For ones where you can't afford these grade separations, roundabouts would be nice in theory, but we know for freight productivity and the like, a lot of the times people don't want to do that on the major national freight networks and the like. This is where I think the option of that sort of long acceleration lane, merge, enough space to then provide that U-turn facility with big merge option back, as opposed to any sort of crossroad like that. So this way you get the vehicles up to speed, the energies are good, nice run out areas. Again, you get that speeds and angles comparatively good. So in theory, that's how you can sort of get quite well aligned with safe system principles without having to either significantly reduce the through vehicle, the bullet vehicle speed, or the grade separate. Okay, so that's that. I won't subject you to extra content because I think you've all done pretty well. Thoughts about seagull type intersections seem to have a bit of controversy about them. Yeah, so seagulls are fascinating because they do have that. Yeah, there's that element of better angle of crash for that that merge point. Unfortunately, though, it's merge from the right, which is challenging. If you have enough space, merge from the right can be okay, but certainly articulated vehicles and the like have a lot of trouble in that merge from the right. The research on seagulls and road safety indicates that it's quite dependent on quite a few factors. But the New Zealanders came up with this seagull intersection assessment tool, which is a spreadsheet publicly available. And I think it's really good. I will find that and send that around because I think that it's an interesting one to have a look at. But certainly, even like a seagull, you still got that first cross traffic. So as you exit, you've got an immediate cross traffic right angle crash. So that's not going to be good. Great alignment with safe system principles anyway. Even signalizing it, you still got that potential challenge there. So compared to a roundabout, it's not anywhere near as good, but it does provide that movement of through vehicles in a faster manner. Good question though. So I just jotted. I got to just down so seagull. I'll send some stuff. Okay, let's just share the screen and we'll finish this off very quickly. Okay, so in Moodle, reminder, you've got all the reference documents, course info and everything there. You can download that, store it somewhere if you want. Finish off all the quizzes. I think you've done modules 1, 2, and 3 already. So 4, you're going to complete your safe system assessment. So you're going to upload that. Then for this module, you're going to complete the quiz. And then course feedback, because you sort of split yours into 2, course feedback here, and then your certificate will appear. So you do have a quiz out of this session. And just waiting on you to complete your safe system assessment, upload it. You've still got another week before it's due, but it hopefully will knock it off. Now, if you're really struggling there, no real issues with giving extensions and the like, but kind of thing that I think if you don't just get in and knock it off, it could linger around for a long time. So just try and knock it off there. Any questions on your assignment or anything? Anything? Okay. I'll stop sharing. So yeah, thank you for your taking time out to finish this off. I would have loved to be there in person and we would have got out to a few sites, but I think we've done pretty well and hopefully you've been enjoying getting out to that local site and using the process. Please get in contact if you've got any questions around that. How you're doing, what you're going about. Yes, with the swims, just press the button and accept it. Yep, that's right. Good question there, Brad. So that one's just, our assurance that you're acting safely, as well as us having risk assessed the sites and made sure everything can be done safely, and you're not going to go out there. So you just click the button and say, yep, I've acknowledged I've had a look at that and I will do my part. So thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to do this. I think safe system assessments, as we talked about, are a really good, handy tool should be part of the infrastructure assessment process for any projects. Use it. Use the tool. If you want examples of any, please feel free to get in contact. We've done quite a few now, so we've got a good library of safe system assessments to help you. Happy to chat through different issues. Or if you're dealing with any different road safety infrastructure or road safety related issues, always happy to have a chat to you about it, send you any info we've got, or yeah, just try and help you work through it. So please keep in contact. Get out there and do some safe system assessments. Offer it to others, maybe for their projects if they weren't going to do one anyway, and you could just value add or get that process happening in your project. So it's going to be a good thing all around. So thank you very much. Giving you a bit of time now for you to jump in and move that along. We did have a bit of time, as I talked about, allocated to discussion back and forth, or a bit more discussion on some of the things I think you're pretty well aware of. So I'll let you go and get into that safe system assessment. So thank you very much. And I look forward to hopefully being able to see you all in person again very soon. Thank you. Bye.